If you've ever thought family is your rock, my story might shake that belief to its core. I used to trust in the strength of blood ties, but when my daughter faced a life or death crisis, my parents, the ones I expected to stand by me, chose parties and appearances over her. Now, after I've lost everything and clawed my way back, they come begging for my help. But I'm not the fragile man I once was. I'm Nathan, 32, and I run a small interior design business in Austin, Texas. I'm not drowning in riches, but I'm not scraping by either. I earn enough to provide for my wife, Sarah, and our 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, keeping our life stable. Not extravagant, but free from the constant worry of bills piling up. My parents, Robert and Diane, aren't exactly elite, but they've always craved that image. They own a well-known furniture store, not fabulously wealthy, but comfortable enough for a sprawling house, shiny cars, and weekend gatherings with their social circle. For them, success isn't about happiness. It's about how others see you. I'm their eldest son, with a younger brother, Ethan, just 2 years behind me. The favoritism was clear even when I was a kid. If I brought home an A, they'd nod, saying it was expected. But Ethan's B plus? That deserved a cake and a celebration. When I headed to college, they barely noticed. But Ethan's enrollment at a local school? They threw him a massive farewell bash. Growing up in that environment taught me early on that I couldn't count on them. I threw myself into work, built my life from the ground up, and became independent. I never asked for their support, but I never imagined they'd choose a party over their granddaughter's life. After graduating college, I landed a job at a small interior design firm in Austin, starting as a design assistant. The work wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Every blueprint, every detail in a space gave me a sense of creating something meaningful. 2 years later, with enough experience under my belt, I took a risk and started my own interior design company. It was small, but it was mine, letting me chase my passion. That's when I met Sarah. It was a sunny afternoon in September, and I was rearranging displays in my shop while checking inventory. She walked in, looking for a cozy reading chair. At first, I thought she was just another customer, but we ended up talking for an hour about books, music, dreams, and plans we hadn't yet finished. A year later, we were married. Then came Chloe, our lively little girl with bright, sparkling eyes like her mother's. Sarah and I thought nothing could dim our happiness. When Chloe was born, we weren't rich, but we had enough. I ran my business, and Sarah worked as a preschool teacher. Life was busy, but fulfilling. But we made one careless mistake. We didn't have health insurance. As a small business owner, I didn't get employer-provided coverage, and private plans seemed too expensive. Since we were all healthy, we decided to put it off until we were more financially secure. A choice I'll regret forever. Chloe was always full of energy, but one winter evening 5 years ago, when she was just 3, I noticed something off. She had a persistent cough at night. Sarah and I thought it was a cold, but weeks passed, and the cough didn't fade. It got worse. She became tired, lost her appetite, had a low-grade fever that wouldn't quit, and sometimes stopped playing to catch her breath. One afternoon, while Sarah was playing with her in the living room, Chloe collapsed, whispering, "Mommy, I'm so tired." Sarah panicked, scooping her up and calling me. I rushed home, saw my daughter breathing rapidly, her eyes unfocused, and carried her to the car, speeding to the emergency room. The doctor's face was tense when he returned with the CT scan results. "Nathan, we found a congenital abnormality in Chloe's lung. It's pressing on her airway, and she needs surgery immediately before it worsens." My heart sank. A 3-year-old with a lung issue? How could this be happening? Then came the bigger shock. The hospital's billing office handed me a bill for $120,000. "We can proceed with the surgery, but we need assurance you can cover the costs. Do you have insurance?" I didn't. That moment, I realized the gravity of my mistake. My daughter was paying for my oversight. I gripped Sarah's hand, trying to stay calm. We'll find a way. Just save her. But $120,000 in days? How could I possibly manage that? When I thought of my parents, a small spark of hope flickered. I didn't expect them to swoop in and fix everything, but surely they'd help their granddaughter. How could grandparents stand by when their child's life was on the line? I drove to their house, my heart heavy. When I stepped inside, I found them hosting a party. The house was packed with guests. Live music played. Wine glasses sparkled in the hands of well-dressed people, and the air carried the scent of gourmet food and expensive perfume. They were celebrating Ethan's upcoming wedding while I was desperate, fighting for Chloe's life. I approached my parents, keeping my voice steady. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk, it's urgent." Diane frowned, gesturing for me to wait as she chatted with guests. I repeated myself, my voice no longer calm. Robert looked annoyed that I was interrupting their event. "Nathan, can't this wait?" I clenched my jaw, struggling to hold back my anger. "Chloe has a problem in her lung. The doctors say she needs surgery now, or she might not make it." I paused, waiting for concern, for questions. How is she? Is she in danger? What did the doctor say? But there was nothing. Not a single question about Chloe, not a flicker of worry on their faces. I swallowed hard and continued. "The hospital needs $120,000 before they can operate. I've tried everything, but can't come up with that much so fast. Can you help? I don't need the full amount, just enough to start the surgery." Diane set down her wine glass. "Nathan, we've already planned Ethan's wedding. We can't cancel or postpone it now." I blinked, unable to process her words. Robert crossed his arms, his voice cold as a business deal. "We've spent $300,000 on the wedding. If we give you money, it won't happen." I stared, a cold numbness spreading through me. They'd spent $300,000 on a lavish wedding for Ethan, but wouldn't spare a dime to save Chloe's life. I turned to Ethan, my younger brother, who I'd always protected and supported. He stood in a tailored suit, champagne glass in hand, looking at me like I was an inconvenience. I let go of my pride and dropped to my knees in the middle of that crowded party. "Ethan, I'm begging you, just help with a little. I'll pay you back. Chloe could die without this." He stepped back as if I were something unclean and scoffed. "You think I'm going to cancel my wedding over this? I'm responsible for my fiancé and the life I'm building. Sorry, I can't help." I couldn't believe it. I'd knelt before my brother and he laughed in my face. Around me, guests whispered, some chuckled, others shook their heads like I was a pathetic fool making a scene. Robert touched my shoulder, his voice icy. "Get up, Nathan. Stop embarrassing the family in front of our guests." I rose slowly, but I was no longer their son. I looked at each of them, Diane, Robert, Ethan, before speaking, my voice sharp with bitterness. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Ethan. Today, I finally see who my real family is, and who's just a stranger." I turned and walked out, never looking back. As I stepped outside, the sky opened, and rain poured down. Heavy drops hit my face, but I stood frozen on their doorstep, feeling nothing but the crushing pain in my chest. I'd begged. I'd knelt, and all I got was cold indifference. I rushed to my car, slammed the door, and for the first time I broke down, sobbing like a child. I didn't hold back, my cries choking in my throat as I buried my head against the steering wheel. The storm outside matched the one raging inside me. But then, an image of Chloe flashed in my mind. She was waiting, fighting for every breath in that hospital room. I couldn't fall apart. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and floored the gas, speeding back to the hospital. When I arrived, my in-laws, Ellen and George, were already there. They weren't wealthy, just ordinary, working-class people. But Ellen rushed to me, gripping my hands, her eyes wet with worry. "Nathan, why are you soaked? Did your parents help?" I couldn't answer, but she read the truth in my eyes. George placed a quiet hand on my shoulder. "It's okay. We'll figure it out ourselves. We sat with Sarah, determined to act fast. The next day, I started selling everything I could. My beloved car, gone for $15,000. Our savings, $25,000, wiped out. I borrowed from friends and colleagues. People at my company, many barely getting by, stepped up. A young employee with us only 6 months pressed $500 into my hand. Boss, it's all I can give. An old coworker I hadn't spoken to in years sent $3,000. I owe you a favor. Time to repay it. Every coin, every bill, every small contribution came together for Chloe. I sold my computer, my watch, even our furniture. Our apartment grew emptier by the day, but we were still $40,000 short. Just as I was scrambling for the rest, my in-laws called. "Nathan, how much more do you need?" George's voice was steady, unwavering. I hesitated, ashamed to say it. 40,000. Silence. Then Ellen spoke, her voice calm but firm. "All right, come pick up the money tomorrow." I was stunned. "Where are you getting that much?" George let out a soft chuckle, full of love and resolve. "We sold our house? As long as Chloe gets better, it's worth it." I stood frozen, tears welling up. My parents had turned their backs on their own blood, but my in-laws, with no blood tie to me, gave everything for Chloe. "I don't know what to say," I managed. George smiled warmly. "As long as she's healthy, that's all that matters, son." With their sacrifice, I gathered the full $120,000. Chloe's surgery was a success. When the doctor stepped out and said, "The procedure went very well. She'll recover gradually," I collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands, a relief washing over me like nothing I'd ever felt. Sarah and Ellen held each other tightly, and George stood there, nodding as if this had been his plan all along. I looked back at everything. Family isn't defined by blood. It's the people who stand by you in your darkest moments. From that day, I swore I'd never beg my biological parents again. I'd already found my true family. 2 weeks after the surgery, Chloe was discharged. She grew stronger each day, her every step brimming with life. As I pushed her wheelchair out of the hospital, she looked up with a radiant smile. "Daddy, I want to run and play again." I couldn't hold back my tears, but these were tears of joy. I hugged her tightly, feeling her strong, steady heartbeat, and turned to Sarah, meeting her loving gaze. We'd been through hell, but we were starting anew. Deep inside, though, a fire burned. I hadn't forgotten the day I knelt and was turned away. I hadn't forgotten my parents' cold indifference or Ethan's smug smile. They'd looked down on me, but I'd show them what I was capable of. After Chloe recovered, I threw myself into work. I wasn't just working to live. I was working to repay those who believed in me, to honor those who helped, to prove I didn't need anyone's charity. I woke at 5 in the morning, worked 16-hour days, and pushed myself to learn about management, investments, and business growth. I moved beyond interior design, taking on bigger projects, hotels, shopping centers, office buildings. I never said no to a challenge. Sleepless nights, endless client meetings, high-stakes negotiations. Every hurdle fueled the fire inside me. 1 year after Chloe's discharge, I landed the biggest contract of my career, a $2 million interior design project for a major real estate corporation. 3 years later, my company had grown 5-fold. What started as a small business with a handful of employees became one of the top interior design firms in the region. My name started appearing in business magazines. From zero to millionaire, Nathan's journey of rebuilding after adversity. A success story, written in tears. My parents saw it all, the articles, the TV interviews where I spoke at entrepreneurial conferences. But I wasn't their desperate son anymore. I was Nathan, the self-made entrepreneur who built everything from nothing. A year ago, I sat down for an interview with Forbes after my company was named one of the 50 fastest-growing interior design firms. The journalist looked at me with curiosity and admiration. "Nathan, what drove you to achieve this success?" I smiled, a smile only I fully understood. I once had a family I thought would be my greatest support, but when I needed them most, they turned their backs. I knelt before them, begging for help to save my daughter, and they said they'd already spent their money on my brother's wedding. Her eyes widened. They chose a wedding over their granddaughter's life? I nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I want to thank them, Robert, Diane, Ethan. Their coldness turned my anger into success. They taught me family isn't about blood, it's about who stands by you. The interview aired and the headlines erupted. Millionaire entrepreneur reveals family's heartless betrayal. Grandparents chose lavish wedding over granddaughter's life. When money matters more than family. A chilling story. My story went viral. Millions were outraged, flooding social media with comments. How could grandparents treat their granddaughter like that? Ethan's wife must regret marrying someone who'd let his niece die for a party. The storm was just beginning for my family. My parents' business crumbled. Longtime clients canceled contracts, business connections vanished. The same people who once toasted with them at fancy parties now avoided them like the plague. No one wants to work with heartless people. Robert and Diane were pushed out of the world they once strutted through, left alone and ruined. As for Ethan, he thought he had it all: a grand wedding, a beautiful wife, a cushy life. He used to pity me, thinking I was a failure for kneeling before him. But his world fell apart. When his wife Olivia read my interview, she was horrified. "Ethan, is this true?" He stammered, searching for excuses. But the truth doesn't bend. Days later, Olivia filed for divorce. She couldn't stay with a man who'd let his niece suffer for a party. Ethan lost everything. A marriage built on selfishness was never going to last. In the end, the heartless were left with nothing but themselves. Years ago, I'd knelt before them begging for help. They laughed and said I wasn't worth more than a party. Now, the world had turned its back on them, and I had no regrets. But success wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about giving back to those who'd stood by me. I returned to my friends, colleagues, and employees who'd given their last dollars to save Chloe. I called them to my office, handing out thick envelopes of cash, offering to pay off debts or invest in their dreams. They refused, smiling warmly, just as they had when they gave me their savings. "Boss, you don't need to do this. You've done something not everyone can. Overcome everything. We helped because we believed in you, not for reward." I couldn't find words, just gripped their hands, grateful beyond measure. These were the people who showed me what family truly means. But my in-laws' sacrifice, I couldn't let that go unanswered. They'd sold their home to save Chloe, choosing a rental life without hesitation. After her discharge, I spent a year working to restore what they'd given up. I secretly tracked down the new owner of their house, negotiated, made offers, and finally bought it back. The day I handed them the keys, Ellen froze, tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, how?" I smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. This is the least I can do." George stood silent, then clapped a firm hand on my shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. "I never doubted you, son." We sat together that night for a real family dinner, something I hadn't felt in years. 5 years after Chloe's hospitalization, as we prepared to welcome a new baby, I decided it was time for a change. I bought a bigger home, not just for Sarah, Chloe, and our soon-to-be-born child, but for Ellen and George to live with us. They'd given me a home when I'd lost everything. Now I wanted them to live without worry. Chloe was thrilled about her new sibling, but when I told her grandparents would move in, She leapt up and hugged me. Daddy, I'll see Grandma and Grandpa every day. I ruffled her hair, smiling. That's right, sweetheart. They'll always be here. Watching her radiant smile, I felt it in my heart. Everything had come full circle. I thought I'd never hear from my parents again, but a month ago, while reviewing contracts in my office, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated but answered. Nathan, it's Mom. Diane's voice, one I hadn't heard in years. The voice of the woman who'd watched me beg and turned away, now carried regret and desperation. Can you help us? I stayed silent. She let out a shaky breath. We're in trouble. We mortgaged the house and the bank's about to take it. We need $200,000. $200,000. I remembered begging for $120,000 to save Chloe's life, and they'd chosen a party. I remembered kneeling before them, their refusal, Robert's cold eyes, Ethan's smirk, their voices saying a wedding mattered more than my daughter's life. Now they thought I'd save them. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. Mom, do you remember when I came begging for Chloe? I told you she might die without the money. Silence. Her voice cracked. I remember, but you refused. You said Ethan's wedding was more important. You let me walk away without a second thought. She sobbed. I was wrong, but please, Nathan, we need you. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Let me ask you, Mom, between a party and your house, which is more important? She fell silent. I continued. You chose a party over your granddaughter. Now, after losing everything, you think I'd choose you? She cried harder. We're family, Nathan. Family helps each other. I laughed, bitter and hollow. No, Mom. My real family helped me. My in-laws, my colleagues, strangers with more heart than my blood. She tried again, desperate. You can't be this heartless. You can't let us lose everything. I spoke firmly. Mom, I lost you and Dad the day you abandoned me and Chloe. Without hesitation, I hung up. That night, after tucking Chloe in, I sat in the living room and told Sarah and my in-laws everything. Diane's call, their looming foreclosure, my refusal. I thought Sarah would back me, but she looked at me for a long time, then took my hand gently. Nathan, I get why you don't want to help, but maybe think about it again, not for them, but for you, so you won't carry regrets. I frowned, stunned. Sarah, they abandoned our daughter when she was dying. I can't just forget that. She nodded, her eyes soft. I know, and I'm not saying forgive them, but do it for yourself, so you won't feel burdened later. I turned to Ellen and George, expecting support, but George shook his head. Son, we're not asking you to forgive them. Sometimes helping doesn't make you weak, it shows you're stronger. Ellen added softly, you have everything now, a loving family, a thriving career, a bright future. They have nothing but despair. If you help, you'll truly win. I didn't respond, just nodded and stepped onto the balcony. I stood there for hours, staring at the dark sky, replaying that day. The moment I begged, when I knelt before Ethan, their cold refusal. I'd thought rejecting them would feel satisfying, but I felt nothing, just emptiness. The next day, I called Lucas, a close friend in finance. Lucas, I need you to check something. Are my parents really losing their house, or is this a trick? He didn't pry. Give me 3 hours. 3 hours later, an email confirmed it. They were broke. Their house mortgaged. Without $200,000, they'd lose everything. I stared at my screen, feeling something I couldn't name. They'd once had it all. Money, status, connections. Now they were on the edge, and I was their only lifeline. I took a deep breath and dialed Diane. She answered instantly, her voice desperate with hope. Nathan? I kept my tone steady. Mom, I'll help, but on one condition. Anything. Just tell me. You and Dad come to my company in person. I'll give you the money directly." She paused, then agreed hastily. "Okay, we'll come right away." That afternoon, I sat in my office, a black suitcase on my desk. Inside, $200,000 in cash, 20 stacks of $10,000 each, neatly arranged. This money meant little to me now, but to them, it was their last chance to cling to the lavish life they'd worshipped. The door opened, and my parents stepped in. They no longer carried the confidence they once had. Robert looked gaunt, Diane worn, her hair streaked with silver. They sat across from me, eyes filled with hope. I said nothing, just reached forward and unlatched the suitcase, flipping it open. 20 crisp stacks of $100 bills gleamed under the office lights. Diane gasped, eyes wide. Robert swallowed hard. I pushed the suitcase toward them. "This is $200,000, enough to save your house." Robert snapped the case shut, clutching it like a lifeline, nodding repeatedly. "Thank you, Nathan. You finally understand how important family is." I let out a cold chuckle. "No, Dad, you're wrong. Family is important, just not this one." Their faces stiffened. I leaned back, crossing my arms, staring them down. "Do you know why I'm giving you this money?" Diane shook her head. Robert stayed silent. "It's not because I pity you or want to reconnect. I want you to understand one thing. This is the last time." I tapped my fingers on the desk, my voice icy. "From this moment, you're no longer part of my life. When you walk out, consider me gone." Diane broke into sobs. Robert clutched the suitcase tighter, his face pale. "Nathan, don't do this. We're family." I smirked, echoing their own words from years ago. "You're smart, aren't you? You always know how to handle things. You'll figure it out, right?" Robert's lips pressed into a tight line. Diane cried uncontrollably, but I felt nothing. I stood, looked at them one last time, and nodded to security. "They can leave now." The guards opened the door, gesturing for them to go. They clutched the suitcase, speechless, and walked out. The door closed, and I knew this was the last time we'd ever exist in each other's lives. They left with $200,000, but they lost any tie to me. I thought I'd feel relief, but strangely, I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, no anger, just an ending. But one thing I know, this won't be the last time they reach out. They've lost everything, and I'm still their only lifeline. Maybe in a year, maybe two, they'll call again, saying they need money to survive. Maybe Ethan will reach out, claiming he's in trouble. They'll use tears, promises, every trick to pull me back. But should I let them? Did I do the right thing, or should I give them another chance? I'm asking you, what would you do? Dear friends, we're thrilled to have you with us. Get ready for a whirlwind of emotions, unexpected twists, and gripping stories. New adventures drop every single day, packed with tension, mystery, and excitement. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This channel is made for you, and the most thrilling moments are still to come.